I'm Amanda,
And I'm Cara.
and welcome to the Historical Society podcast. Thank you for joining us. So this is episode 9. I'm still kind of shocked that we've done 9 episodes. So it's been tiring.
Yeah.
Yeah. But anyway, okay, so today what we've decided to do is like a continuation of episode 5. Episode 5 was the origins of the patriarchy. And I decided to call this episode The Origins of the Patriarchy Part 2, The Copper and Bronze Ages. Bless you.
It's me.
Gesundheit.
My mic pickup was like, "Brr."
It was like, do you feel better?
Yeah.
So much better.
Yep. I
Okay.
feel better.
And so I thought it would be interesting for us to look at the time frame where we kind of left off. So most of the examples that we discussed during that episode were from the Neolithic era, period. Sorry, I think I'm supposed to say period. Neolithic period.
Okay.
And the time frame we originally looked at was the Paleolithic time frame, beginning somewhere like 3.3 million years ago, and then that goes up to the beginning of the Neolithic period, which began around 10,000 BCE, and then I found out. So technically, 10,000 BCE is 12,025 years ago. So 12,025 years ago, that was when the Neolithic period was. Okay, so I think for the rest of this episode, I'm going to change the terminology I'm using for those. I want to make it okay. So Paleolithic also is known as the Old Stone Age, and then
Okay.
Neolithic is also known as the New Stone Age, and because that's related to the tools that they were using at the time, made of stone, and so what we're going to talk about today is related to what they were using to create objects and precious items and eventually like weapons and things like that. And so copper and then bronze. Yeah. So what I was just going to do a quick summary of episode 5 of kind of what we talked about so people who haven't heard that could kind of understand where we're going in this episode. And so in the New Stone Age, we looked at a settlement called Çatalhöyük, and that settlement is in today's modern day Turkey. And this settlement existed sometime between 6,500 BC to 5,700 BC, and it was had approximately 8,000 people. And so it was kind of a large settlement for its time. And what they found there, what archaeologists have found, is basically gender was not a huge deal there, and how the society was, how importance was ranked basically in the society was age. So you would have elders who were revered, and the older people in the society were given given like the
Seniority.
exactly, yeah, they were given the places of importance, and they're
Cool.
guessing the places of political power and things like that. And so that time frame, we also noticed through other types of research, like besides archaeology, like the paleogenomics and the physiology researchers, that it's showing that men and women were also doing similar things during that time period. So they were working the same ways, they were hunting together, they would have to go to war together. So there wasn't really this women are staying home. We talked about in the caves wearing their tooth necklaces, and
Doing your makeup.
yeah, in their makeup. And
Mm-hmm. Getting ready to go shopping.
that's right. They're shopping out on the Paleolithic Sahara. I don't know.
Yeah.
Wherever they were.
So we were talking about how gender roles as we know them, obviously, we're very different or even undefined.
Exactly. Yeah. People were basically doing the same things.
Yeah.
And that's what we looked at. We looked at those settlements that prove that reality. And then, so today, what I thought we would do, because we kind of ended our deep dive exploration in that time period in the New Stone Age, I wanted to
Mhm.
continue from there chronologically into what is sometimes called the Copper Age or called the Early Bronze Age. It also has another name
Ooh.
called the Chalcolithic age.
Fancy.
Yeah, and so basically that
Yep.
means like copper, the Copper Stone Age, basically. That's how
You're
that
not
age is.
responding to me at
I
all.
can't hear you. What'd you say?
Oh, I said, ooh, fancy.
Oh.
Okay, is my mic up enough?
Um, say something again. You're like,
Like a joke how you never hear me.
I'm gonna turn up my own volume because on my side it looks like your mic levels are the
Selective
same.
hearing.
I do engage in selective hearing sometimes,
Yeah.
perhaps.
Anyway.
I think that's what it was. I think my volume was low.
And do you remember which episode it was that I had to leave early?
I think it was this women's suffrage.
Was it? Okay.
Yeah,
It'd be funny if it was this other early Stone Age period that I
right.
left early on.
Yeah,
Because I have to leave early again today for a concert.
right. And so people are going
But
to be stuck with me again.
it would be kind of funny though if it lined up because are these episodes are the most boring for me. And
Yeah,
the ones that you do the most research on. I mean, you love history and you know, I feel like I love some history.
that's right. You're like, this
But
history, not so much.
I am your moral support.
You are. Thank you. I
Yeah.
appreciate it.
I'll chime in here and there.
Yeah,
And then I'll leave.
good. And I'll leave. My headphones are up now,
Good.
so no, 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 not like good because you'll chime in, not because good you'll
Good.
leave.
Ah, good.
That's hilarious.
Oh
Oh
man.
man.
Okay.
Okay.
Off we go.
Off we go. Okay.
I think
Into the couple
actually
age.
your best accent is Cockney accent.
Thank you. Thank you, good lady. Okay.
You're fitting.
Thank you very much. I'll be here all week.
You're welcome.
Okay. All right. So into
Well,
this,
I'm aware.
yes, into this time frame. So the Copper Age starts roughly around 6500 BC. And after the Copper Age, we have the Bronze Age, and that starts roughly around 3000 BC and then ends around 1000 to 1200 BC. So that gives you an idea of the time frame. So we're looking at 6500 to about 1000 BC in these two different ages, the Copper Age and the Bronze Age.
Okay.
So what's unique about these time frames? So during the Copper Age is when humans began to discover copper and use it for crafting smaller items initially, like important little, I don't know, like jewelry. So
So it wasn't left for utilitarian objects or
eventually it would become that way, but early on it was for smaller things. And they think it's because it was kind of a rare thing to find.
yeah. Cool.
And then eventually humans discovered how to create the alloy of copper and tin, which is bronze. And then they used it for, weapons and all sorts of things. During the Bronze Age is also where we saw the invention of the wheel and the ox-drawn plow.
Okay.
Yeah.
I wondered where those came from.
Yeah, here we are. Progress. I was just kind of curious. I went down this tiny rabbit hole really quickly during this time frame. I was curious like how many people were on the planet during these time frames. So I looked this up. I checked out a book by Sarah Harper. It's called Demography: A Short Introduction. It's a really tiny little book. I did not read it, I'll be honest. I just kind of
Yeah.
skimmed it.
Skimmed it.
So she says here a quote from the book: 1.2 million years ago, there were around 55,000 humans. Then by the end of the last ice age, 20,000 years ago, there were around 1 million Homo sapiens. And so 1.2 million years ago, that would fall into the Old Stone Age. And then 20,000 years ago would be the end of the Old Stone Age, just prior to the New Stone Age. So that was like the time frame we talked about in episode 5. And then I was curious, like the Copper Age and the Bronze Age, like what are we looking at there for humans? And I will say, like, it was difficult. I don't think there's like a real like for sure answer. So there's like these broad guesses, educated guesses that people have made. And so the Copper Age, what I found was like there'd be like 5 to 10 million people. And then the Bronze Age, you were going to see like 40 to 100 million, something. So there are these huge like explosions of the population during these time
Yeah.
frames. Yeah, so I was just a little, I thought kind of like, go
Do we
ahead.
know why?
Well,
I mean,
I mean, some people say that as you get closer to agriculture, that's where you see these booms happen. People are
we know why.
settling.
Like, we know how the birds and the bees work, but like, we know why.
I think it was that. I think it was, that's
I bet
amore.
that's how they were. I bet that's how they were born. Born.
That's how they born it. I believe that's how they born it. Okay, that wasn't that funny. Sorry.
I
You're like, oh boy.
mean, it's funny to us. Isn't that what matters?
Yeah. I mean, it's a good question. So also there was this bottleneck that occurred in the human population. It was around 70,000 years ago where they think the population on the planet literally was between 1,000 to 10,000 people
Oh,
because there was some kind
wow.
of big like volcanic eruption that I think ended up killing off, like making it harder for people to live. So there was a huge like,
Oh, well.
and then
Natural disaster.
explosion of population. Yeah.
By the
So
way, I'm sorry if I got close to my mic and there was like that loud noise. I was trying to put my shoe on.
it's okay.
Sorry.
It's okay.
My apologies.
No worries. Coda is whining at me. She's looking at me
Oh,
intently.
is it dinner time?
No, she had dinner.
Okay.
I think it's the I want my pumpkins, beans, and yogurt time. Yeah, she looked at me. That was it.
Yep, that's
Soon.
it.
Soon, buddy. I love you. Okay. Okay. All right. So let's move into some examples from this time frame of what was happening during this time. So we're getting closer to Angela Saini's premise that the patriarchy is really dominant around 800 BC. So that's where you basically see it kind of everywhere. And so what's happening between where we left off, the New
Yep.
Stone Age and the Copper Age and the Bronze Age?
Okay.
Okay.
What brought us there?
What brought us
What
there?
made it?
So I looked at a couple different articles. It kind of shocked me. I mean, it shouldn't have, but it did a little bit of how much information is out on the internet. It's just like, woof. So I Googled like gender Copper Age and then gender Bronze Age. And there were so many things that were super interesting. And so I'm just going to highlight really quickly some of them.
Okay.
And so the first one was an article I read by Mark Houghton, and it's entitled Gender in Early Bronze Age Ireland and Scotland. And it was published online April 15th of 2022. And then it was published in print in February of 2023 in the European Journal of Archaeology, Volume 26, Issue 1. So if you want to learn more, read it yourself.
Cool.
There you go.
No,
I
looking
did
that
read
up.
this one. Yeah, I read all of this one. And I kind of just summarized it. So in the article, he looked at the burial practices in early Bronze Age settlements of Scotland and Ireland. He investigated specifically how they were buried. Did they have stone encased graves? Were they buried facing a certain direction? What were they wearing if that was left over? What were they buried with? Things like that. And after looking at all the data, he concluded that there was no one way of burial practices for genders at that time. At one point, there was evidence to suggest that men were being buried in a certain way, but then in that same area, it changed. So, yeah. So his final thoughts after, and this is a very long article, so this is a very
Yeah.
quick summary. His final thoughts were that despite that these areas were representing small scale societies, these societies were still connected to one another and the rest of Europe, and yet still, it seems they maintained varying traditions of understanding relating to gender. So they're basically that's saying there's no patriarchy for sure here yet, kind of a thing.
Okay.
Okay, and so the next time, this was like I think the most interesting article I found, and it was super exciting for me. It's about this woman they call the Ivory Lady.
Oh yeah, you talked to me about that.
Yeah,
This.
and so
It's pretty cool.
yeah, so I'm taking this. This is from an article published in Scientific Reports, Volume 13, article number 9594, published July 3rd of 2023. So this is very recent, and it's entitled Amelogenin Peptide Analysis Reveal Female Leadership in Copper Age Iberia, circa
Cool.
2900 to 2650 BC. And the authors, I'm going to butcher their names, but I think it says on there I need to say them. Marta Cintas Pena, Miriam Lucianaz Triviano,
You're doing your best.
I am. Raquel Montero Artus, Andrea Bielik, Patricia Bortel, Fabian Cons, Katharina Ribe Salisbury, Leonardo Garcia San Juan. Okay. So
Okay.
you guys can rate me later at how much I butchered those names.
Yeah.
So my first thought, so this title had a lot of words that I don't know anything about. So amelogenin, peptide. I got to start there, right? So I looked up amelogenin in Merriam-Webster's dictionary, and it said any of various proteins produced by ameloblasts that make up the bulk of the extracellular matrix of developing tooth enamel and play a role in regulating the mineralization of tooth enamel. So it deals with tooth enamel and the proteins
So
that
they
make it
found
up.
the remains of a tooth?
It was a tooth
What?
necklace. No.
No, that's all they knew.
So what they do is they can
It wasn't
analyze.
teeth. It
It
was
was
a necklace.
it was a necklace. No.
That's how they knew it was a lady.
Yeah, that's like, oh, this is definitely a lady. She's
I
got a
mean,
tooth necklace.
again, they're not standard gender norms.
Right.
So,
Yeah.
well, so I guess that wouldn't make any sense.
Only
Well,
women
how do they
wore the
know?
tooth necklaces.
How
No.
do they even know? Well, how do they know?
How do they know?
Does there she?
Okay, so
Yeah, does female
okay.
tooth enamel
Yes,
differ?
it does.
Okay.
Okay, so what's interesting is
That's interesting.
originally this a group of bones, like
Yeah.
whatever this particular human remains, they originally assumed it was a man. They
Huh.
just were like, this has got to be a man.
Interesting.
Yeah. For a multitude of reasons. We'll get to that. Okay. So the amelogenins, this is another definition from NIH's website about bone regeneration. Amelogenins are enamel matrix proteins currently used to treat bone defects in periodontal surgery. So it's used for regenerating bones today as well.
Yeah.
And then the peptides part of this is simply it
Hmm.
means that they're fragments of the enamel matrix protein amelogenin. Okay, so that's what it
Okay.
is. It's the proteins that make up your enamel, and the peptides are the fragments of that. Okay, so then I wanted to know how they did the testing, and this is way above me. I looked at an article from the Journal of Archaeological Science Reports, volume 54, published April 2024. It was entitled Advancing Sex Estimation from Amelogenin Applications to Archaeological
Deciduous.
Deciduous
Deciduous. Yeah.
and Fragmentary Dental Enamel. That was awesome. See, Cara, you need to be here.
I am here.
You are. Okay, so the authors were Julia Gamble, Victor Spicer, Mercedes Hunter, Ying Lau, Robert Hoppe, Dorothy Dangvard Pedersen, Jonathan Wilkins, and Renee Zahidi.
John A. Wilkins.
John A. Wilkins. Not John B. Wilkins. John A. Wilkins. Okay. All right.
no.
So they use a technique for this research called high flow liquid chromatography tandem mass spectrometry.
I know what
Okay.
they do. Yeah, they do hair testing with mass spectrometry.
Wow. Okay, so it says this technique extracts peptides and analyzes them to determine an amelogenin sex estimation, an ASE score. The ASE score is calculated using the difference of summed peptide intensities between female and male samples. This technique has been
Whoa.
shown to have a probability of correct sex estimation at over 99%. And so
That's
basically
wild.
the XY chromosome, like when they test female versus female tooth enamel versus male tooth enamel,
Yeah.
they show a different rating on this basically
So it's
through
very
this test.
it's very accurate and very fine tuned testing.
Exactly. Yeah. And it's brand new. Like they just started doing this kind of stuff in archaeology.
What's brand new? Like what year? Did you read that?
I read somewhere that they had tested this sample in 2021. This
Okay.
ivory lady.
The high flow liquid chromatography.
Yeah.
Tandem mass
So
spectrometry.
this one apparently is the most accurate of all the ways of testing for this.
Yeah.
So
I'm sure it continues to get better too.
yeah. Okay. And so what they found at this site, and the site is in Spain, And we're looking at, 2650 to 2900 BC. And this part in Spain is most closely related to the city of Seville today. So that's kind of where this
Yeah.
burial happened. What,
Mhm.
Sevilla?
I don't know how to say it. I
I
actually don't
okay,
know.
yeah. Clearly, I don't know how
Just
to say
kid.
it.
I don't either.
The city name at the time supposedly was Valencina.
Okay.
Valencina. Okay. All right. So
God, we're getting a lot of people.
I know. Sorry, guys. That was probably the most like technically crazy segment of this episode.
It's like even talking about this, like we're talking about the patriarchy and we're talking about gender comes up, and our view of gender is so vastly different than what we grew up with, and then obviously how it came to be. So it talking about it is very confusing, especially when we're going back in time,
Right. Yeah.
imagining. I just don't know the answers to all this, how it was viewed.
Well, I think there's
Um,
a lot of
but
debate on that. Like,
yeah, like how was it viewed, how it was viewed then, how it's evolved, where we are now. It's
right.
just a lot,
Yeah. And there
lots
was
to
a
learn.
there was another article that I didn't include in this archaeologist was talking about how it's very possible that even how we perceive of gender is different. So like she found that
Yeah.
sometimes men were buried like women and women were buried like men. And is that
Yeah.
was that just a variation of gender? Like why was that? Was it because people were a third gender like in Native American cultures there were these other genders outside of male female as well.
Like non-binary s
Like non-binary.
like
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah. So,
Years, centuries ago.
yeah, and just a Native American culture within
Okay,
the United States basically early on. Oh, sorry, I guess
that's cool.
whatever America was called back in the day.
Okay. Yeah.
The land
Yeah.
prior to the United States.
Yes.
Okay, so at this particular site, what they found was an elaborately buried person who was between the ages of 17 and 25. And originally, they really thought this was a male. And then after all this testing, they know with 99% accuracy that this is actually a woman. And the person, the manner of the burial that I'll talk about really quickly basically says that this person was extremely high ranking and was extremely important to that society. They were buried with a set of lavish and prestigious goods. Couple things: a large ceramic plate on which there was wine and cannabis. I thought that was interesting. They were
Cool.
also buried with a copper awl, flint and ivory objects, and a large elephant tusk that came from Africa, which was
English.
very interesting given this was in Spain. And so the archaeologists thought that was a rare gift, which showed a lot of
Yes.
importance. They also found that this particular burial had other offerings offered to this person after the burial itself. And this one,
Okay.
there was a set of slate slabs, and on top of it there were other precious items that were laid there. And the one that really interested them was this precious, beautiful dagger with a blade made of rock crystal and a handle made of ivory with around 90 decorative beads, including mother of pearl. So it was a very beautiful object. So the writers of this article, they firmly believe that this individual was the most important figure on the entire Iberian Peninsula at this time. And given the research of the society, they also think she was the most powerful person. And given the nature of the social structure they think existed, they believe this woman ascended to this position through her own merit and her own personal achievement, not by birth.
Cool. And that dagger was laid in there. Is that to suggest maybe that she was a warrior?
Well, I don't know if they've made an assessment on that. I didn't read that, but
Okay.
maybe it relates to her leadership position or
Just
something.
interesting. Yeah.
And then around the similar site, they also found another burial site that was also shown to give prominence to the people who were buried there. These were also women, and they looked to be some type of female religious leaders of that time frame. And they were also buried with a lot of very precious objects and things like that. And so this, they're feeling, the authors of this particular article are wondering if this is actually a matriarchy. And so this is
Okay.
kind of brand new. Starting back in 2021 and now this article coming out in 2023, this might actually be the first matriarchy in the end. Yeah. So that's the Iberian Peninsula in Spain, and that is from the Copper Age itself. So that's kind of an idea or an example of not the patriarchy, but honestly something completely different, the matriarchy, which is rather
Absolutely.
astounding. Yeah. All right. So the next thing I was going to do was just go into the Bronze Age itself. And so again, this is going to be roughly 3000 BC. But I've also read like so when different civilizations evolved and grew, they did so at different rates. So in Britain, they believe the Bronze Age didn't really begin until 1900 BC. So, there's a wide array of growth rates and times. Okay, so I read this article. It's entitled Bronze Age Women. And it's actually, if you go online, it's presented really thoughtfully. They have a bunch of they have pictures of the actual remains, which is kind of crazy, in the coffins with like presented as they found them, I guess,
Mhm.
with the clothes. You can see it, like their skulls, and it's all there. It's kind of wild.
Wow.
So this was compiled by Samantha S. Ryder and Karen Margarita Fry, and it's from the website The New Historia. And so if you want to find that, Google those things. Bronze Age women. All right, so this one focused a little bit more on just the mobility aspect of women during the Bronze Age. And so how did women get from one place to another, right? Were they traveling? Were they tradespeople? Or, the common guess of what was happening with if you find a woman who was born in one area and then died in a different area, they just assumed it was exo. Let me make sure I say this right. Exogamy. So exogamy, exogamy. I learned this word. I've never seen this
Mhm.
word before, but it's what was presumed to be the way a woman would go from one culture through marriage to create an alliance with another culture. And so they assumed that any type of mobility for women was basically only that. And that was the assumption for quite some time. But what they're finding is that there were many other ways for women to be mobile during that time, to travel. And they're still basically exploring those things. And it's similar. They're using different scientific methods to achieve these results, these findings. So they're looking at this from a new lens. And so this article, basically, they look first at this woman. They're titled. I don't think I'm going to say this right. It's Skridstrup,
Okay.
the Skridstrup woman, and they found that most likely she actually did fit the exogamy framework, where she was probably a high-ranking female of one tribe, and she was then, moved over to another tribe and to create an alliance, and so she fit that mobility movement of what they assumed women were when they would find a woman not from an area, why she was there. But then they found this other girl buried in a similar way. So these women, there are three women in this article, and they were all buried in a way that showed they were valued, basically. They were buried in these like big wooden coffins, and they were always placed with belongings that were important, it looked like. And so this woman, I'm not going to say these well, Egtved girl, and
Mm.
they think she was more of like a traveling priestess, basically, where she clearly it was seen. And I can't remember. There's a certain type of testing that they're doing, and I don't know if I wrote it down, but it's not the amalgam testing. It's some type of isotope testing. And I remember the example of, I don't remember what it's called, which is terrible, but the example was your teeth actually, your teeth tell where you were born, but the rest of your
Mm.
body will show signs of the new place where you live, basically. Think that's what I read. And they likened it to if you have a bucket of sugar and you put a vanilla bean inside of it, the sugar will take on the fragrance and taste of the vanilla bean. But then if you put an orange rind in there, over time it will take on the scent of the orange, right? And so they're saying that the parts of your body always maintain the vanilla, basically your origin, but then the rest of your body will show through sampling, oh, it's orange rind. If that makes sense. The only difficulty is truly determining the different points of geography for like the origin point, other than knowing it's different than the current place, wherever they live. Does that sort of make sense? I don't know. It's kind of a weird.
I mean, at first I thought it did. Then it didn't.
Which part?
Are you
Well,
saying that it's like vanilla and orange are the two different places?
yes.
Okay. Yeah.
And they leave markers. So yeah. So like your origin place is vanilla.
Was important.
Okay. So you're the sugar. We're the sugar.
Got
And the
it.
locations are the flavors.
Got it.
Yeah.
Okay. Yep.
Okay.
That makes sense.
Um.
I am the sugar.
Yeah. Coda. Hi.
I am totally the sugar.
I'm totally sugar. Okay, so this last woman I'm going to focus on, and this is the very last thing. Hi, I want you to be on the video camera. Come here. Come here. Come on, up.
You mean the last thing before the celebrate?
Yeah, the last thing before the celebrate. Oh, Coda.
Okay, I gotta go in a minute, so we should
Okay.
hurry.
All right, so
How long do you think it'll take you to get through her?
a second. Okay, so Coda's going to make her video cast debut.
Buddy.
So
She's not looking at the camera.
yeah, she's not a
does.
fan. She's like, this is the worst. Okay.
Here it is. Let's get on because I want to.
Okay,
Here for
so
it.
the the Obi woman, that's her name, and I don't think I'm saying it right. It's an O with a slash through it. The Obi woman is considered to be
Okay.
the richest female Bronze Age oak coffin burial from Denmark. And similar to the other women they found, she was also buried with a monumental burial mound. They basically found her a lot like the Ivory woman with a lot of really important things. So,
Yep.
like bronze neck collar, spirals of bronze, dark blue glass
Collar.
beads from
Caller.
collar. Yeah.
There you go.
Dark blue glass beads imported from Egypt. So there are lots of things like that. And the other thing they found was she was buried with a very important sword. And a lot of times this type of burial, I'm going to put Coda down because she's not happy with me. Okay, bye, Coda. Was she was buried with a sword, which was very typical of chiefs at that time. And so there's speculation, was she also a leader? Was she also a chief, basically? And so to conclude, what's fascinating to me about all of these things is that there are these old discoveries that people have looked at a certain way and concluded certain things. Like, for instance, the ivory lady was, they thought, the ivory man. But with new scientific methods, they're finding that a lot of these old ways of looking at these things have to be reevaluated or changed completely. And women are being found during this time period of being leaders, of being very important to those societies, and also of being mobile and moving around more than originally believed, and the manner in which they're moving has changed.
Oh.
Yeah, so during this time period, women are still, important, still doing cool things, and unfortunately, that will change.
Yeah. Will some of the next episodes focus more on what caused that change?
Yeah. I mean, we kind of talked about so Angela Saini's idea for change
Yeah.
is basically it's basically happening because of those larger states, the empire,
Yeah.
and women needing to basically be baby machines so that these elite rulers can have their big armies and can have all the food they want and all that stuff. And so we'll get into that. Okay.
So just, I've been trying to get your attention with that, but you just, nope.
Sorry. I think it's, you know me. One track
Yep.
mind.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. Sorry, you have to finish on your own.
It's okay. This
Did I leave my camera up?
Yep. Leave her up.
Because
Maybe one of the
Okay.
cats will come. So Kara's
Well,
back in Seattle. So
I kind of have to. I was gonna change, so so
oh
I
my,
can't
this is
leave it
gonna get
like that.
interesting. Just kidding.
When I turn
This
it
will
like
be
that.
our most watched episode.
Shut up.
Should I
Anyway.
put on music? I don't know. Like,
Oh God.
oh man,
It was lovely being here
it
this
was
long.
lovely. It was lovely. I'm gonna put
I
on
will
my party hat and I will
I will
celebrate.
see you for the next episode.
Okay, I'm gonna celebrate some women without Kara. Bye, Kara. Have a good concert.
Bye. Thank
You're
you.
welcome. Okay, so celebrate women.
Do I leave my mic on too?
Okay.
Do I?
Um, sure.
Sure.
I could probably mute you. Let me see if I can figure out how to do that.
Yeah, I just wasn't sure if I should leave it plugged in.
I muted you. I can't hear you now. Just kidding. Okay, so we're gonna celebrate women without Kara, sadly. But so I wanted to say 3 cheers for the Ivory Lady because how cool we might actually have the first queen of an area, which is super neat. All right, and the second person we're going to celebrate from the past, just quickly, is Kathleen Kenyon. Kathleen Kenyon, she was a really famous British archaeologist. And just to read a little bit about her, let's see. While she was a student, she was at Oxford. She was the first female president of the Oxford University Archaeological Society in 1928 to 1929, and was later closely associated with the founding and operation of the University of London Institute of Archaeology from 1935 to 1962. She was the director of British School of Archaeology in Jerusalem and principal of St. Hugh's College in Oxford. And in 1973, she was made a Dame of the British Empire in recognition of her contribution to archaeology. She died in 1978. One of the first things she did at the age of 30, she ended up being the director of excavations at what's called the Jewry Wall in Leicester. I think I'm saying that right. What they found there was basically Roman remains from like 160 AD. So that was kind of a big find, and it became a huge excavation project. So that's her. And then the woman from the present, we're just going to do this quick today. Her name is Karen Margarita Fry, and it's maybe Corinne Margarita Fry. She's one of the authors of that, the Women of the Bronze Age article that I talked about, where they were looking at women being buried in Denmark. And so Corinne, or Karen, is the National Museum's first permanent full professor and Denmark's first first professor in archaeometry, an interdisciplinary field between archaeology and natural sciences. She is a member of the Danish Royal Academy of Sciences and Letters and has received some of the most prestigious national and international awards, including the Danish Masters Association's Research Award and the Shanghai Archaeological Forum's Research Award. She is the project director of several research projects, among others, quote, The Tales of Bronze Age People, and is the author of a large number of research-related scientific articles and popular scientific publications, as well as a bestseller book in Danish. I'm not going to attempt to read that title because I know I will butcher that. So that is the end of today's episode. This is a shorter one. Hopefully we didn't get too bogged down in the weeds, but I just thought it would be a cool episode to highlight women from that in-between period of before we start seeing a lot of patriarchy take over. So our next historical episode, we're going to look at the Iron Age, which happens right after the Bronze Age. And that is going to take us into basically that time frame where things start to shift. And maybe we'll talk about other theories of the origins of the patriarchy, things that contributed to why people's thoughts changed about gender as well. So maybe like ideological shifts along those lines. I think religion is part of that. But we'll talk about that in our next episode during that time frame. So thank you so much for joining us today. Hopefully you didn't fall asleep. You probably woke up when I celebrated women. So take care, and we will see you next time.